It's a political rabble-rousing. It was a soft power of a diplomatic nudge that was coupled with what they call a dark-eyed disapproval of the clergy and a dash of international pessimism that put NASA's plans to swear in its own people's presidents on hold. Now, Raila Odinga will not be having the parallel swearing-in event after all. The National Super Alliance Coalition called off the controversial event yesterday evening. A statement read by Odinga's chief campaigner and Aman National Congress leader Musalia Mudavadi says that a new date that will have Odinga installed as a rival president will be communicated later. Let's take a look at that story by Stephen Leto.
The National Super Alliance boss Raila Odinga's self-declared intentions to be sworn in on Tuesday will not be realized after all, after his core principles called it off indefinitely this evening.
Following extensive internal consultations and engagement with a wide range of national and international interlocutors, the NASA leadership wishes to advise the NASA fraternity and the general public that the swearing-in of Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga and His Excellency Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka as President and Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya and the launch of the People's Assembly scheduled for Tuesday, 12th December have been postponed to a later date.
The ceremony that was to run parallel with the 54th Jamhuri Day celebrations was to be staged in Mombasa's Tononoka grounds, with Mombasa Governor Ali Hassan Joho having agreed to have Odinga and his running mate Kalonzo Musyoka take the oath of office at the coastal town.
We wish to thank the government and the people of Mombasa County who had graciously offered to host the event. Thank you very much, Mombasa.
Sources have revealed to Citizen TV that this evening decision was the product of protracted discussions between the NASA principals amid radically different standpoints on the matter. Raila Odinga is said to have been adamant that the swearing-in should proceed, while other NASA core principals developed cold feet and doubts of the legality and political logic behind it, arguing that swearing-in Odinga could potentially slide the country into chaos and tarnish the coalition's image internationally. Odinga has also been under intense pressure from foreign envoys and the charge to drop his bid. Today's turn of events watering down the momentum the ceremony had generated, especially after Odinga's pronouncements in Jacaranda grounds 2 weeks ago.
We are aware that this will be a disappointment to the people of Kenya who are eagerly waiting for this occasion. We wish to assure them that our resolve has not changed. Specifically, we wish to reiterate that any national dialogue must have electoral justice on the agenda.
It was also telling that Raila Odinga's ODM party did not sign the statement read by Mudavadi on the postponement, pointing to the possibility the NASA affiliate parties have not been reading from the same script.
There are only two options: democracy or self-determination. We shall be announcing the new dates for both the swearing-in ceremony and the launch of the People's Assembly, as well as more vigorous and prolonged resistance in the coming days.
It appears that the National Super Alliance has bowed down to pressure of calling off its planned swearing-in of Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka. What now remains to be seen is whether the move by the opposition alliance will lead to structured talks between the government and the opposition. Stephen Leto, Citizen TV, at the Okoa Kenya headquarters in Nairobi.
Right, that's the story that we are looking at, and I guess we begin with the fact that on that statement there was no signature from ODM. Is that a telling sign? We begin with you, David.
Well, the question would be, what has been the model of communique from NASA? Is it that in all their communique the former Prime Minister has been a signatory and he signs? If that's been the case, then it would be telling. So then it means that whereas Mudavadi may have read the statement, the former Prime Minister may do his own thing. However, if he has never been a constant signatory, because the mouthpiece over the time has constantly been Musalia Mudavadi, then it may point to the fact that they have had consultations extensively, as they said, and come to that agreement. Yeah.
All right, and let's get the the way it stands legally. Of course, the Attorney General said that swearing in Raila Odinga as the people's president would amount to treason, and went ahead to say what that would portend.
High treason.
High treason. And is there a legal basis of this swearing in, Jenga?
In fact, I was eager to hear from David, because he says that we needed to proceed with the swearing in.
We needed to proceed.
That we needed to proceed.
Right.
And also observable is the fact that it is Musalia who has become the bearer of all the sad news. Whenever an event is to be cancelled, strikingly it's Musalia who is normally sent. I haven't seen the Honorable Prime Minister coming to postpone an event. His job is being done by Musalia. But from the legal perspective, I think it is clear to every one of us in this country that we cannot have any possibility of having two heads of state at the same time. It's not a possibility from a legal and also a pragmatic perspective. You can't have two bosses in charge of the same territory. Even in the animal kingdom, there is always clarity as to who is the boss. There is no possibility of having two bosses in charge of the same territory. So if there was an attempt to have that, then we know that chaos would be the outcome. Now, the law as it is, the Constitution itself and the Penal Code has addressed the issue of treason, and in very broad terms, because even the mere imagination of deposing a sitting head of state is deemed to be treasonable, and it is the law, and it exists. It has not been repealed, it has not been amended. The Penal Code is clear in its wording, in its terms. So if something was to happen whereby the facts would be proved to match those envisioned under the Penal Code, that treason has occurred, then the only available option would be a trial for treason, and the consequences are far-reaching for treason. But all the same, it is important. I would have wished that before the event was postponed, we would have been given some details about how it was to be carried out, because we have had several swearing-in ceremonies in this country, and we have seen the protocol and the procedure that normally is involved. I would really have wished to have, even if it's a sneak preview of, for instance, where was it to happen, the venue clarity. Of course, I heard Musalia saying it would have been in Mombasa, but I don't believe him. There is also the aspect, I would have also wanted to know who would be the person to swear in, because the Constitution requires that there should be the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary in the presence of the Chief Justice. I would really have wished to see how it would that would have been choreographed. I would also have wished to see who are these guests who would have participated, because when we have had other swearing-ins, we have seen heads of states who have come to grace the occasion. I would have liked to see who are these heads of state who would have graced this occasion, and then there is normally a state luncheon after the swearing-in. I would have liked to get an invitation card through by Brother David here to at least go and take a plate of rice and soup. So at least it was an anticlimax. We needed to have more information because in my view, I think it is not possible. It was a straight joke from the beginning that Raila will be sworn in as president, because even if you look at the people who attended the briefing that delivered the news about the postponement of the swearing in, you would see strikingly there's one person who is missing, Orengo. Orengo knows the law. He knows that you cannot swear somebody just like that. So when it comes to certain matters, then he pulls back and then he leaves the boss exposed. I don't understand why.
Well, let me say, I always wondered why it is said that the hottest part of hell is reserved for lawyers. Today I find the reason. Because one, my brother Njenga says that I, David Osiang, stated that the swearing in should have gone on. Yet in today's entire discussion, I have not at any given point said that a swearing in should have gone on. Far from it, I pointed to what he has now brought up as an inconsistency in his very word, which is why I said that the electoral reforms were retrogressive. He now says that the law requires the Chief Justice the Chief Registrar in the presence of Chief Justice to swear in. Now he brilliantly turns a blind eye on the reforms done by the legislators in Parliament that watered down that very legal piece. Okay? So that's it. Now, that said, I want us to take this for what it is. Of course, would there have been a swearing in? Maybe yes. Because the law, as was watered down by the legislators, provided for a crevice for that kind of thing to happen. Would it have, however, led to acquisition of political power? Certainly not.
Okay.
This is what I want to make clear. What Raila Odinga has been doing, in my estimation, is the use of symbolism. Rallying the aggrieved around a cause and telling them, we have this option. Not much. I don't think that he has been under any illusion that he would take the whims of power. However, symbolism, historically, has often been a pathway to substance. It may not enjoy the advantage of immediacy, but in the long run it may yield something. Essentially, that is why the Supreme Court must come in and be able to kind of tone down the anger. The truth is, the amount of resentment amongst half of the country that rallied behind Raila Odinga is so palpable. For them, they probably wanted, not necessarily, some of them may have actually believed that the swearing in would lead to the acquisition of political power. But those who know better would know that it was the use of symbolism. In different countries, the opposition parties have oftentimes become defiant and even had their own flags. Not because that makes them a country on their own, but because it is a symbol of disaffection. It is a symbol of disenfranchisement. It is a symbol of anger. It is a symbol of rage. What must happen then? What must happen is, this leaves President Uhuru Kenyatta squarely as the man to resolve this. And the longer he has taken, I think he has been advised, mistakenly in my opinion, not to indulge the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. And that's up to him to make the choice. If I were to, however, speak to him, I would tell him that leadership sometimes takes making the bold, humble step. It leaves you as the greater man. He ought to have reached out, at least let the Kenyans know that he did his part. If Raila Odinga will reject his advances, it will be seen that the president made an attempt to try and talk to the leader of opposition, to come to a table of agreement on what really the leader of opposition wants. Ignoring him would be tantamount to ignoring his support base, rather directly. Now, for countries that have had such palpable anger, you see, on the front page of the Standard, you have seen the unfortunate thing, which I condemned rather vehemently, the banning of a bus in Homa Bay. Such things may be ignored and thought to be irrational actions, but they are not things we have seen in recent days. As a person who has studied particularly political psychology, I know that this is out of a people who are angry. This is anger stored up in people. It is not right. It needs to be condemned for what it is. It is an act of hooliganism. But if you scratch beneath the surface of what it may be, you're calling it hooliganism, you will find deep down there rests the anger of a people that must be managed well. Still waters run deep. So we may enjoy the current situation of calm and not necessarily peace. And if it is not addressed, it may not get out of hand now, but any little thing will tinker it into a catastrophe. So the leadership of the country needs to tone down, sit with the opposition leadership, figure out a way around the opposition support base, half of the country, that feels that the process has not at least been fair.
Right.
So that the Prime Minister, I am very sure he has been one of the leading lights in matters of democracy and rule of law, and I don't think he was under any illusion that he would take power. I think he was probably going to do that just to rally the people who are disaffected to the call of, you know, a luta continua. We will deliver this country.
Jenga, does it hold, is there any provision of which that swearing in will not be tantamount to, as the AG said, high treason? Is there any way it can be done? Because it says they're going to swear in him as the president of the People's Assembly. David says it's symbolism, but you know, for many, you know, even within the supporters of the base, they probably say, you know, we sasa tunaenda kuchukua usukani pale State House. Is there any legality to it?
There would be no legality. All the same, it will also depend on how the event is conducted and the designated objective of the function. Because, critically speaking, nothing would prevent citizens from assembling and maybe for one reason or the other deciding to elevate one of their own and settling on the title that instead of calling you chairman, we can say you are our president. But the problem would come in if you would want to swear somebody into office as or with the view of having a person to occupy or take the position of a sitting head of state. Otherwise it is possible, and I think the constitution we have is liberal enough to allow for people to express themselves through creativity, artistically, and in any other fashion. But it will also depend on the ultimate goal. That is why the law provides for the freedom of assembly, but all the same, not in absolute terms. You could have an assembly that starts off as very orderly, conducted with a lawful purpose and intent, but at the point where now it starts veering off from the law, that is when it is now declared or recognized as an illegal assembly, and that now invites some sanctions. So depending on how the actions, the activities progress. But people assembling together and saying that we want to swear this person is the president of the assembly or the People's Assembly, in my view, that would not be to amount to treason. But the objective must be carefully looked at. That's why even when the law gives us the freedom of speech, you can say as much as you may want to say, but it might get to a point where now you begin to cross the line if you start getting into incitement, into hate speech, into defamation. So there are all these safeguards that would be used when you want to really demarcate whether an action that is being taken or about to be taken is lawful or unlawful.
David, also, I just want to throw a question to you because, you know, like I said, even just speaking to the people in general, the reason why there's all this bias and even the AG had to come and kind of clarify is because for the people that you've talked about who have the deep-seated issues, like you said, still waters run deep, and they feel aggrieved to most of the people, the interpretation, they don't have the benefit of us sitting here to know that, you know, like I said, it's just going to be the People's Assembly. They think that it's going to be like, you know, like I said, we are going to Nanda State House. This is now our president. So is it important, therefore, for the opposition to come out clearly and explain to Kenyans what exactly this swearing in is going to be, bearing in mind that some of the, according to the papers at least, and the story that we did by Leto, some of the principals feel like something like this would taint the opposition's name further?
I think, listen, for me, whether or not the Prime Minister would have been sworn in isn't much a problem to me as the problem we really have. What is the fundamental problem at hand? The fundamental problem at hand is a deeply divided nation which needs to be healed. A nation in dire need of healing. The fundamental problem at hand is the opposition pointing to electoral injustice, which means that should this not be handled well in 2022, or if we were to have an election before that, who knows? Should it get to that point, then this country will be lost. I am a believer in a pan-nationalist country where all of us feel we belong. The fundamental problem at hand, again, is that a section of the country feels that they don't belong, that theirs has been to be nation builders but not nation owners, that this country has become an ethnic, you know, we've got into an ethnic duopoly. This ethnic duopoly is running the show and showing the rest of the country that it doesn't matter, we are in charge. Now, what must be done is that the leadership of this country, and when I talk the leadership, it's both the opposition and the government, must come around the table and resolve these issues, because these issues will outlive these people, and these issues can go beyond their ability to contain. Should they step out of hand, which is a very legitimate fear. I'm just not fear-mongering. I'm pointing to a legitimate problem and fear in the country. That if you are unable to heal such a divided society, then one day it will get out of hand, and neither Raila nor Uhuru will be beneficiaries of that catastrophe or when this gets out of hand. So the swearing in, the not swearing in is just for me a smokescreen. Beyond that smokescreen, what really is the problem? The problem is a person who represents more than half of the country, or at least about half of the country, who got into a political contest, walks out of that contest pointing out to, you know, some problems, pointing out to an electoral commission that in his estimation, and elucidating facts pointing to the same, in his estimation was captured by the state. Now, if you don't resolve that, then somebody else may run in the future who is not as rational as Raila Odinga, who will tell his guys, get out there and grab the power. Grab it. You know, if you get reckless people like my very good friend Moses Kuria out there, who do not sometimes put much thought into what they say, and they're running for presidency, woe unto us, because they will tell the guys, you have panga in your hands. Now, we cannot afford to degenerate into that, and that is why we create laws that protect the nation and its people, laws that take care of the welfare of the country, laws that can lead us to a better tomorrow. None of these economic things that America is pursuing, in my opinion, is useful if the country is divided. And do not ever confuse calm for peace. What we want is true peace. We need to rewire and remesh the fabric of this country. We can only do that if the president, who was sworn in, comes out and says, listen guys, these are the issues that the opposition leader has pointed out to. These are the raft of reforms he needs done. I am willing to champion these. And in the meantime, for those of you who have felt excluded over years, because in 2013, between 2013 and 2017, the cabinet and the PSs, the appointment of CEOs of parastatals was a sorry state. It just showed that if you're not Kalenjin or Kikuyu, you have no place, which is unfortunate. So he should say, I'm going to be inclusive. My friends, my people will take the heat for it. I know they may have the best it takes, but for the sake of the country and bringing a country, making every Kenyan feeling included in the process, I will build a country for all. I will do it perceptionally in my appointments, and I will do it, beyond the perception. I will do the deed itself by allocating resources countrywide. Because people argue devolution solved that, blah, blah, blah. Right. But devolution has only been a devolution of 15% of the national cake. So if you have to do that, you have to strengthen devolution and show that you're up to the task of making the country feel included. That would be a great step forward.
All right, of course, allow Njenga to chime in as well. And also, the talks of dialogue, do you think that's going to, is that welcome? Because the president is record in saying, and I quote, remember a dialogue, Mungoja 2022, Mwongena William. Do you think that is going to, the dialogue can solve the situation as it is? Also, as you give your final thoughts.
True, in my view, the dialogue is always a very potent tool to resolving any form of dispute. Because if people don't get to talk, then the conflict is bound to escalate depending on the particular circumstances obtaining. And for dialogue to be successful or to take off successfully, then there must be willingness amongst the parties to reach out, and to reach out unconditionally, without conditions. Because if you tell me you want us to talk but you already have a fixed position, then it becomes very difficult. It poisons the environment within which dialogue could have been explored. I have had occasion to listen to President Uhuru, and I've heard him say that he's open to dialogue. There has also recently been reports attributed to him saying that he doesn't want dialogue, which I think is a misconstruction, because the context within which the statements were made, this over the weekend at a funeral in Muranga, what he was alluding to was the reforms to do with the elections. Okay. Because he's validly entitled to state that as far as the constitutional and legal facts go, then he has already met the threshold, and he would want now to quietly enjoy his term, so that if it is to do with another election, now that he is not eligible for another term, he is saying simply that I may not be the best placed person to offer a platform for discussion for an election which I'm not even likely to be a party. However, it is clear that he is open to dialogue in terms of all matters pertaining to how this nation can be brought forward. I've had him reach out even during his swearing-in ceremony to parties on the other side to come together, and the focus can be firmly put on how to progress this country. So I think on his part, he has extended a hand of invite, to his competitors in politics. And I think, again, we would also want to urge for such a similar gesture from the other side, so that there is no feeling that parties are coming to the table of dialogue under cohesion, under compassion, or in bad faith. And if parties are able to come together out of good faith, I would think it is possible to have the issues that are being raised about inclusivity, about sharing of resources, and all those. And it is also necessary to interrogate the narrative that has caused a lot of bitterness within the segments of society that David is alluding to. We need to ask ourselves whether the information that has been relayed to the particular segments is truthful. Because at times, it is possible for political actors to pursue a particular narrative with the aim of stirring emotions and showing particular members of society that they have been marginalized, which may not be correct at all times. So we need to know what is this information that has been given to the people, which has made them to feel that indeed we are not part of this system called Kenya. We need to ask ourselves, how then can we have a situation where everybody feels that they have a duty, they have an obligation to be part and parcel of building this country.
Right. Right. Of course, because of time, I want to also wrap it up before we get into the music, and I'll allow David to give you a...
I think it is going to be burying our heads in sand if we want to imagine that the allocation of resources in this country has been just. Over the years, it has not been so. And whereas the allocation of those resources may not have translated into the pockets of those who are advantaged by their allocation. For example, if you allocated Nyeri County more than you allocated Turkana County, it may not necessarily lead to an economic shift in the pocket of the Nyeri resident. It, however, creates an enabling environment for their economic freedom. So that's the truth. I mean, recently I have seen Cicely Kariuki taking a check of about 470 million to the women group in Murang'a. Now, I have never seen that initiative done, for example, in Western. You have always seen that coffee farmers have enjoyed, apart from rebates, they've enjoyed massive, write-off of their debt to government. When you go to Mumias Sugar, for example, whereas 2 billion is written off as debt, the government will give 600 million of debt to Mumias to pay later. Now, those imbalances are here with us. They are a reality of our times. But that's not the crux of the matter today. The crux of the matter is, I would look at President Uhuru Kenyatta and Honorable Raila Odinga and tell them, this country, dear gentlemen, is in your good hands. Fix the country. President Uhuru, do not listen to your advisors telling you that you cannot negotiate with the Prime Minister. The role of healing this country, dear son, is yours. The legacy is yours. If this country were to flare up in flames today, it will be in history that when you were president, the country lost control. The circumstances under which you became president may be questioned or otherwise. The thing is, you have been sworn in as president. You must act as president of the republic. Get to a table with the Prime Minister, with the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. And as I have seen you time and again having chit chats and speak as brothers and referring to each other, spare the country the cameras and sit down to fix the nation. And Honorable Raila Odinga gets to a table with President Kenyatta. He who comes to the table of equity must come with clean hands. Guys, if you don't fix this country, then my fears will one day be confirmed. I don't want them to. This is our nation. A divided country cries, Mr. Kenyatta. For them, the electoral process was not free, it was not fair. So what will you do? Will you dismiss them and tell them to take a walk and go home? You are not going to do that. Heal their broken hearts.
All right, we want to go over to one Carlos Kiba. Of course, thank you so much to Jerry Kamolo, who's a lawyer, and of course David Ocean, public policy expert.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for making time for us. And also coming up after this, Joe Mudengi is going to, it's Inspirational Monday, so Joe Mudengi is going to be having a conversation around that as well. And now, for now, beautiful music from Carlos Kiba. It's country music right here on Power Breakfast.